I'm Jason Orr. I'm 45 from Southern Indiana, Georgetown, Indiana. I teach at New Albany High School. I have 5 children and a wife. My diagnosis and what brought me to Newport Beach Brain Treatment Center was I was on a family vacation in Florida, and on our way back to Indiana. My wife had been driving for several hours, and so we decided to take a little pit stop about a mile off the interstate, and so we switched drivers. I got back in and it had been raining, and I probably drove maybe 200 feet and was on a hairpin turn, and I saw a car coming across the center line. I tried to avoid, and we still had a collision, but it wasn't a head-on collision. My head hit the driver window, or the area between the 2 windows. Quickly went into shock. So I went to the emergency room. They did an MRI, or not an MRI, a CT scan, excuse me, and said I had a concussion. It was 4th of July weekend. So we eventually got back to Indiana, went to another ER because I was doing my normal morning routine. I was going into the kitchen and not really remembering why I was in the kitchen. Either it would finally come to me, or my wife would, we were here to make coffee, and then it's like, things are like, where's the coffee maker? It's like, where it always has been. So things like that were starting to really snowball. So I went back. Really the only place I go to at the time, because it was 4th of July weekend, was another ER. And they did another CT scan, says, hey, you got a mild concussion, so you follow up with your family doctor. So we did that. I got diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. So from there, he sent me to start doing therapies, speech therapy, occupational therapy, vestibular therapy, physical therapy. So I was doing all those because I was having trouble with speech. I stuttered a lot. I couldn't select my words, or I could come up with part of the word and then couldn't finish it, so I had to come up with new words entirely. Imbalanced, very uncoordinated. My vision was foggy. It was hard to focus visually. I mean, for sure mentally, but visually as well. So there was a lot going on. Emotions were a wreck. I cried all the time. I'm not trying to be a tough man, but I just never really cried, but I was crying. I mean, just all the time. I was laughing at things maybe I shouldn't be laughing at, and crying at times I shouldn't be crying. So that's the route we went with these therapies. I started getting terrible headaches, like this pressure in the front of my head, and then it would relieve, and it was on the sides of my head, and it felt like an ice pick going through, my front of my head into sticking out of the back of my head. So I'm doing these therapies, and I thought they were going to make me better. And going through about 6 weeks of them, I could see that they were training me this was the new me. So I didn't realize that until I came out here to get not a treatment, but a therapy. And now, after 6 weeks of treatment, I can speak clearly without the delays and the slowness. This is the first place that even talked about an EEG, and you get one and you finally see. I mean, you're not right. You're in never land. You're staring off thinking about nothing. Your symptoms are off the charts. And then when you get this EEG, you're like, look, you have all this evidence right in front of you that, your back of your brain, look, it's great. In the middle of it, it's deteriorating. Your frontal lobe is mush, just like what you're feeling, After the treatment, after 3 days of the treatment was, actually I didn't notice it, but my wife noticed it, I smiled at her for the first time in 3 months. And the next day, I carried on a conversation with her that I initiated for the first time in 3 months. Like a real conversation, one with sustenance that matters. And then that Friday I came in and I told Dr. Lee that I was going to dance on her desk because I felt so good. So you could really feel like, man, things are working. Things are working. And then that was just the first week. Second week was even better. And finally, I got tears of joy rather than depression. So that's good. Everybody's so friendly. They care about you and your symptoms and you as a person. And it's great coming in. MeRT gave me again. It gave me hope. Even if it didn't work as well as it did, it would have given me a whole lot more than any of the occupational therapies, physical therapies, psychologists, medicines. It gave me so much more than any of those had given me to start with. The MeRT treatment it's amazing. But I feel so lucky that I'm so close to being like me again.